Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State yesterday announced the white paper on the report of the State Judicial Panel on Police Brutality and the Lekki tollgate shooting of last year was ready. The white paper, which was released last night, showed that of the 32 recommendations made by the Judicial Panel, 11 were accepted in totality, 6 were accepted with modifications, 1 was rejected, and 14 fell outside the powers of Lagos State Government. The 14 outside the purview of the state government will be forwarded to the federal government for consideration. The white paper also rejected the findings of the Judicial Panel's report on the Lekki incident, which concluded that 9 unarmed protesters were killed during the shooting at the tollgate. Arise correspondent Tokunbo Oyetunji has more.
Some of the contents, like you already put right, we'll start from the reactions of the Lagos State government to the recommendations by the panel. You put it right, 32 recommendations by that panel, which made the report public on that's submitting it to the government, the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, on the 15th of November 2021, just 2 weeks ago. 11 of those recommendations were fully accepted by the Lagos State government, 1 rejected, and 6 accepted with modifications. 14 other recommendations fall outside the powers of Lagos State government and will be forwarded to the federal government for consideration. Let's quickly talk about the recommendation, the particular one that the state government said is not acceptable to it, which is that the government should do all its that's not, excuse me, this is the recommendation. It's recommendation number 24, which says a monument memorializing the lives lost and those injured at the Lekki toll gates with the names inscribed on the monument should be put up. The government says this recommendation is not acceptable to Lagos State government for the following reasons. Let me just quickly read a few lines from the reaction of the state government. The finding of the JPI at page 288, paragraph M, is that the evidence of the pathologist, Professor Obafua, that only 3 of the bodies that he conducted post-mortem examination on were from Lekki, and only 1 had gunshot injury, and this was not debunked. We deem it credible as the contrary was not presented before the panel. The panel's finding of 9 deaths is therefore irreconcilable with the evidence of Professor Obafua that only 1 person died of gunshot wounds at 7:43 p.m. at the Lekki toll gates on 21st of October 2021. So that makes you see that the Lagos State government is still standing on what it earlier put out to the public, that only 1 person died from the incident of the Lekki toll gate on that night, as against the recommendations, as against what the panel found out to say about 9 people lost their lives. And if you go further down the reaction of the Lagos State government, it says, having held that there was no evidence before it to the contrary of what Professor Obafua said, the question is, where did the JPI, that's the Judicial Panel of Investigation, then get its finding of 9 deaths from? So that is the question that the Lagos State government is still raising, as reflected in this white paper that has just been released a few hours ago by the state government. So it goes on and on, meaning that the state government has not fully agreed to some of these recommendations put forward by the Judicial Panel of Investigation. That of course, you know that some of those recommendations have thrown up a whole lot of reactions from different parties and individuals, and many Nigerians, even outside Nigeria. So that's where we are now. The recommendations that the state government agreed to, which are 11 of them that they fully agree with, they will be taking more steps on. The one that they have rejected so far, we'll see where we'll go from there. And 6 others that they've accepted with modifications, we'll see what happens. And 14 others that they said they'll be forwarding to the federal government for appropriate considerations and action. So that's where we are for now, Charles. We'll see what is going to happen from there.
Well, joining us now to discuss the reports of the judicial panel, which had already been discredited by the federal and Lagos state governments before the release of the white paper, is Moyosore Onigbanjo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and the Lagos State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, who will also be telling us what Governor Sanwo-Olu sought to achieve yesterday when he invited some Endsars protesters to join him in a, in quotes, historic march. Welcome to the show, Mr. Onigbanjo, and good morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, thank you for joining us. Well, your panel, the white paper panel on the investigations into police brutality and the killings at the Lekki tollgate, concluded, in my view, that that report, the original report by the panel, was full of inconsistencies and contradictions. And to that extent, you know, some of the recommendations are unacceptable. And the key one was the white paper saying that there was no massacre in context as submitted by that particular panel, and that it is not true that 9 persons died. Do you want to take us through some of those inconsistencies and contradictions before we begin to look at the recommendations?
So thank you very much. The position of Lagos State government is based entirely on the report submitted by the panel itself. We went through the report, and what we saw, particularly in reference to what you say, is that in one instance, at I think page 288, paragraph M of the report, the judicial panel said that they found the evidence of Professor Obafunwa, the pathologist, who conducted autopsies on all the bodies picked up all over Lagos during the protest, not just at Lekki tollgate, but statewide, that they found his evidence credible and that there was no evidence to the contrary. Now, what did Professor Obafunwa say? Professor Obafunwa said that of all the bodies he conducted autopsies on, 3 came from Lekki. Out of the 3, only 1 had gunshot injury. And the panel then said, we believe you, we accept your evidence, because there is nothing to the contrary. So in law, if you put that on the imaginary scale, it means what Professor Obafunwa said outweighs every other evidence before the panel. It even goes beyond that. They said there was nothing to the contrary. Then the panel then goes on to say there were 9 deaths. If you look at that page where they listed out actually 11 deceased persons from Lekki tollgate, they didn't explain, there was no explanation as to how they arrived at that conclusion, how they came about the names, who shot them when they were shot. So that's a contradiction, because what you say you believe Professor Obafunwa to have said is different from the conclusion you are reaching. And there were so many others. Take, for example, again, they said 9 people died, and they awarded compensation to only 1. Why, if you believe 9 people died, why are you not awarding compensation to the other 8 people? They also said one Nathaniel Solomon, I think is listed there. They said he died. He was deceased at Lekki tollgate. It also turns out that Nathaniel Solomon was a witness before them who had a petition in respect of his late brother. So look, an allegation that somebody was murdered is not one to be made lightly. In fact, in criminal law jurisprudence, you must prove it beyond reasonable doubt. But where you have these inconsistencies, is Nathaniel Solomon dead or alive? Did one person die at Lekki, or did 9 people die? those contradictions and many more made that particular finding unreliable. Because, I mean, for a finding that somebody died at a scene to be acceptable, there must be no doubt. What the panel did created doubts. It created gaps in their story of 9 deaths. And once there are doubts, the doubts are usually resolved in favor of the person you are accusing to have murdered or killed those people. So it was because of that particular finding was rejected. We have listed out in the white paper some of the contradictions. We're also going to release the 2 reports of the panel for the public to judge by themselves. So it's not just going to be a case of Lagos State government analyzing this in itself and coming to its conclusions. We're going to make them available to everybody, read it, and see how you can resolve the conflict between saying, oh, I agree with the pathologist that one person died and was picked up on the 21st of October 2020, and then going on to then say somewhere else that 9 persons died, and then not even offering any explanation as to how did these people die? How did these 9 people die? Who killed them? Who shot them? When were they killed?
Right.
Nothing.
Because this is at the crux of the matter, I need to ask you, you've made it very clear, but I must ask specifically for avoidance of any doubt. It is the position of the Lagos State government that there was no massacre at the Lekki tollgate. That is the position of the Lagos State government.
So the position of the Lagos State government is based on the findings of the panel itself. So it's not that Lagos State government just conjured this from the air. We looked at the report. That is what the panel itself said, that one person died at Lekki tollgate. Then it then went on to say 9 people died. So it's not Lagos State government that is saying it. It's what the panel said from after reviewing the evidence of Professor Bafunwa. They said it, we didn't say it. It's there. If you want me to read it out for you, I'll read it out. So to say that Lagos State government is saying that no, it's what the panel said, that one person died of gunshot wound injury at Lekki tollgate. This is it. The evidence of I'm reading from page 288. The evidence of the pathologist, Professor Obafunwa, that only 3 of the bodies that they conducted post-mortem examination on were from Lekki, and only 1 had gunshot injury, and this was not debunked. We deem it credible as the contrary was not presented before the panel. That's their own conclusion.
Okay, so that's their own conclusion, but I'd like to ask you, is it that, what are we saying here? Is it that nothing happened in Lekki? Because, yes, you are talking about the evidence of, Professor Bafunwa here.
Yeah.
But also I can raise the case of, and please, can we just all agree on something? That the leaked report was actually the correct report, because from the recommendations on the white paper, I saw that it was most of the recommendations on the leaked report that was reacted to. So can we also talk about the case of the police that was said there, that the panel used the arms register, that the panel used the fact that police officers in that particular police division will normally collect 15 to 20 rounds of bullets. But on the night of the 20th, some collected 60 rounds of bullets, and some even collected 75 rounds of bullets, as stated in the report. So, what happened that night?
So look, it's not that we're living in denial. No, not at all. The report itself, which I urge you all to find time to read, it's about, come to about maybe 550 pages, says, 1, the military, the army was at Lekki tollgate. 2, they fired gunshots. But the forensic expert called by the panel itself said it couldn't determine that live rounds were fired. Although General Taiwo said the army went there with blanks and with live bullets. So that's one thing. Regarding your question about police taking live
more rounds, specifically
rounds,
on the night of the 20th.
More rounds. So if you read the same report, the movement register of the police showed that one policeman was assigned to Lekki. It's all there. And so even if they took more rounds, you still have to go on to show that these rounds were actually used to kill A, B, C, D. So it's not just to say, oh, they took more rounds, because then there's a gap. You have to tell us what they did with the rounds.
So what happened on that night? Because, you see, the panel of inquiry was set up to know what happened on that night of the 20th in Lekki, at the Lekki tollgate.
Yes.
But at the end of this panel of inquiry, it's obvious by arguments and counter-arguments that we've not been able to see the light of what happened on that night.
Well,
so what really happened? Is it that nobody died? Is it that nothing happened? Because what really happened on that night?
So the
For
panel,
the sake of peace, you know, and healing and reconciliation.
Yeah. So that was the panel's duty. The state government set up the panel to find out precisely that. What they found out is contained in the report they've issued. We're going by that report, and I've told you what they said. The army were there, no dispute. They fired shots in the air, whether blanks or live. The panel, I believe the panel said they fired blanks and live bullets. But if you want to accuse somebody to have killed that he shot or killed somebody, you then have to go on to show the details. So you can't leave anything to speculation. Like what you're saying is speculation, that so because they took 70 rounds, because they took 50% more rounds.
No, it's the report that said that, not me.
Yes, it's still speculation.
Okay, the report is speculating, not me. Yeah.
It's still speculation if you cannot show how 9 people died. You must be able to show. You must be able to tell the world what happened at Lekki on that day. Now, so if your findings, unfortunately, I would call it, leaves all these gaps, all these doubts, then we can't rely on it.
Well, on that note, Mr. Onigbanjo, we'll take a short break, and then when we return, there will be more issues to be raised with regard to the white paper and the report itself. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Moyosore Onigbanjo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, the Lagos State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. And we've been discussing with him the white paper on the judicial panel of inquiry on police brutality and the Lekki tollgate incident of October 2020 here in Lagos. Well, thank you very much for staying with us, Mr. Onigbanjo. Well, a clarification and then a question. Now, there have been concerns expressed about the scope of the work of that panel. And some people say, look, many policemen died. Police stations were attacked. Many people had their businesses, affected in the course of the protest. But that the report that was eventually submitted by that panel, the Okuobe panel, did not even talk about the plight of policemen. Could it be that, the issues affecting policemen was not part of the terms of reference? Because I've had a comment to that effect. And then secondly, it's about the constitutionality, the legality of the panel itself. And that came to the public domain when it was raised by Minister of State for Labor and Employment, when he said, state governments have no powers whatsoever to inquire into affairs affecting the Nigerian Army or the police or any federal institution. And we know that 14 recommendations have now, in this white paper, been forwarded to the federal government for action. If indeed the tribunal the panel lacks jurisdiction and has no legal basis, then on what basis is the Lagos State government forwarding those 14 recommendations to the federal government?
Thank you, Dr. Abati. So, I mean, the Honorable Minister clarified that he was speaking for himself. He didn't say he was speaking for the federal government when he spoke. Secondly, as to the legality of the panel, I do not agree with him, with all due respect, because firstly, it was the National Economic Council that directed states to go and set up the judicial panels of inquiry. Then under the law, the panel of inquiry, the Tribunal of Inquiry Law of Lagos State, the state government is vested with the power to set up an inquiry into anything of public concern in the state. Now, what are we talking about here? Largely abuse of human rights. As far as I know, abuse of human rights is a matter on the residual list, which means it's only the states that can handle such matters. And in fact, there are a couple of Supreme Court cases which say categorically that the federal government cannot set up tribunals of inquiry for the federation. So on so many fronts, that statement by the Honorable Minister, Mr. Kiamu SAN, is incorrect. That's not the position of the law. On the issue of the allegation that the panel made no reference to policemen or didn't take them into consideration, to their credit, they did. They issued 2 reports. The report which leaked only dealt with the issues from the Lekki tollgate. There is another report which they issued which was not leaked. That report deals with all the Endsars petitions, about 253 in number. Out of that 253, policemen also brought their own petitions. And in that report, they awarded a sum of, I think, 36,200,000 to policemen who were affected one way or the other by protests. So they did, to be fair to them, they did consider the plight of policemen too. And even if you look at most of their recommendations, they're for better welfare for the police, better equipment, more training, psychological evaluation. So they took them into consideration. Most certainly they did.
Right. In the white paper, the Lagos State government goes to great lengths to show how they encouraged the panel, how they funded the panel, encouraged the media coverage of the panel, chose, quality representatives to, populate the panel. And yet the question arises, and I must ask you, were you, as the Lagos State government, put under pressure by the federal government to discredit this report? And I ask this because a member of the panel, Ebo Adeboruwa San, has raised concerns about personal attacks against him and members of the panel. You also will recall the allegations by a young lady who was involved in the panel that she was targeted and attacked, and another person was threatened.
So the federal government never put the Lagos State government under any pressure to discredit the panel or anybody. Secondly, if you check the records, nobody from Lagos State government discredited the panel. When they, in fact, submitted the report on the 15th of November 2021, the governor praised them and thanked them for the job they did. Even yesterday, in a speech which he made before the white paper was released, he thanked them again. So nobody from the Lagos State government, directly or indirectly, has sought to discredit members of the panel. We appreciate the job they did for almost 13 months, putting aside everything to attend to this. So we will not do that, and we did not do it.
All right, and speaking of that, so what would you say as regards the interview conducted here when the lawyer for the government defamed the character of the members of the panel, even talked about bribery. I'm talking about the lawyer that represented the Lagos State government. That interview that happened when the leaked report came up. That's one.
Mr. Owonikoko.
Mr. Owonikoko. Two, what's the rationale behind the peace pack, all right, as regards healing? Then the rationale behind toll-free day on the 20th of October, but also saying in the white paper that we will not make the tollgate a memorial because nothing has been proven that happened or substantiated that happened. What's the rationale about those three decisions?
Okay, so first, regarding Mr. Owonikoko SAN. Mr. Owonikoko SAN represented Lagos State government before the panel. His brief ended when the panel finished its work. Mr. Owonikoko is also not a spokesperson for the Lagos State government. And you must also understand, Mr. Owonikoko SAN conducted this matter. So he must have his views on the matter. This is something that he did for 13 months. So it's not a surprise to me, just like other people who participated in the process. You've also called them, they've expressed their views. It doesn't mean that they're speaking on behalf of anybody. They are entitled, everybody, the four of us in this room, we're entitled to have our views as to what happened. It doesn't mean if your views don't tally with somebody else's that you're the government's agent. No. Secondly, regarding the young lady that unfortunately was attacked, again, we do not condone such attacks on anybody. The Lagos State government, I think we've conducted ourselves in such a manner that we strove to always do what is right. We complied with the law. We set up the panel. So if we didn't even want the panel, there are so many ways it could have been stopped. They asked for extension, we gave them. The initial funding was 200 million. They exhausted it, they asked for more, we gave them. We appointed independent-minded people into the panel. And the panel itself said in its report that they give credit to the Lagos State government for allowing them to be completely independent. All these acts are not actions of somebody who will then be going after a witness. To what purpose? For what motive? The report is out. It's in the public domain. And so all these allegations people make against the state government, most of it is just based on, mistrust, lack of trust for what government does. But if you check from the day this incident happened to this day, Lagos State government has fulfilled all its promises to the public. We set up an independent panel. We said we would release a white paper, we did. So, we've complied with the law all the way.
Okay, so the second question. What's the rationale behind the peace pact?
The peace pact, yeah.
And at the same time,
the toll-free
day on the 20th of October, but you're saying you're not going to create a memorial because nothing happened. That's what you're saying in the white paper. Yeah.
So that is to show you that we recognize that those were difficult days for the state. Not just in Lekki. People died in Fagba, Ikorodu, Oshodi, in so many places. And in recognition of what happened during that time, also remember that the state government supported the Endsars protest. The governor went there to meet the protesters. He spoke to them. He took their 5 for 5 demands to the president. He was the first to also set up the panel to probe allegations against SARS. The toll-free day is in the spirit of reconciliation, closure. The peace pact is also in the same spirit. So this is government. You must try to bring everybody back together again.
So why wouldn't you memorialize and you'll give a toll-free day at that tollgate?
Memorialize by putting the names. What names? Okay. What names do you put? And then What about all the other people in Fagba, in all these places?
Okay, another clarification and then questions. When the Lagos State government admits that it would have a toll-free day on that Lekki toll gate, where does that leave persons, protesters, stakeholders who are saying, in fact, there should be no toll gate at that particular point anymore? Is the Lagos State government saying invariably that the managers of that particular toll gate, I think the LCC, will very soon be reinstated? Because that was a major issue during the proceedings. That's one. Two, then what are the next steps that the Lagos State government will take in this regard? And then the peace walk that the governor proposed for the month of December. Some of the stakeholders that he invited have said they won't be part of it. Will the state government still go ahead with that peace walk in December? And is the state government likely to make any effort to persuade the civil society activists who say they don't believe in any idea of a peace walk? They just want justice.
So, regarding the issue of the toll gate, it was never one of the terms of reference of the panel. It came up before them because the LCC said, oh, recall, the panel said nobody should go to the toll gate for a very long time. They even prevented the LCC, the owners of the toll gate, from going back into their own offices. The LCC then applied before the panel that, look, we need to make claims, insurance claims, and insurance valuers need to access the site. Let us back there. That's how come that issue came before the panel, because the panel said, oh, don't go there because we want to send forensic experts there. So it was, if you look at their terms of reference, the issue of reopening or closing the toll gate was never one of their terms of reference. As regards the issue of some civil society members who have said that they will not participate in the peace walk, of course, government will seek to persuade them to change their mind, because ultimately we all thrive in peace. There is no government that wants to see a war-torn city, a war-torn state, or even a state in which there's so much tension. So we will continue to talk to members of the civil society. We will continue to demonstrate government's good faith. We will continue to demonstrate government's sincerity by showing them all the steps that we have taken in the past 13 months that we arrived at where we are now. It's a continuous engagement.
Well, the clarification I asked for, I don't have it yet. Will the SCC return very soon to the toll gate at Lekki and at the Link Bridge? And then those toll gates would come back and people will begin to pay tolls again.
So that's a determination for the LCC to make. It's a decision they will take, and I'm sure when they take it, members of the public will be the first to know.
Well, as we just wrap up in a minute, less than a minute now, what are some of the reasons you feel that those who have rejected the governor's invitation to join him on the peace walk, what are some of the reasons why you feel they should reconsider that position?
Well, so most of them issued those statements immediately after the governor's speech, before the white paper was released. When they see the white paper, and when they also, because most people have not read the panel's report. The leaked version has been out there, and I'm sure, again, 309 pages, not many people would have the appetite to sit through and read it. But for anyone to come to a fair determination of what has happened and the actions that government has taken in the white paper, they need to read the two reports. And then they will see that government is being fair. Most of the recommendations were accepted. The ones that Lagos State government didn't have power to take decisions on, we refer them to the appropriate authorities. We've accepted most of the panel's recommendations, and we rejected very few.
Well, 32 recommendations, 11 accepted, 1 rejected, 6 modified, 14 forwarded to the federal government for relevant action. We want to thank you very much, Mr. Onigbanjo Moyosore, Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice for Lagos State, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.